My presentation is on environmentalism in Europe. To start off, my presentation is focused on the comparison of environmentalism in Europe and how it compares to environmentalism in America, and also why it's more successful there than it is here. So what is environmentalism? According to ESDAW, environmentalism is a sustainable management of resources and stewardship of the environment through changes in public policy and individual behavior, and its recognition of humanity as a participant in and an enemy of ecosystems. The movement is centered on ecology, health, and human rights. Basically, I found out that environmentalism in each place is very dependent on its culture. For example, most Europeans aren't aware that they're being environmentally conscious because their daily routine is much different than ours is, and not as environmentally harmful as ours is. For example, transportation. Because most urban places in Europe are very dense, there is no room for large vehicles in the long and narrow streets found there. Most Europeans walk, bike, or motorbike to their destination. Here in America, almost every family has at least one car that is used to travel miles and miles each day to keep up with the busy schedule each family has. Here in America, our economy relies heavily on industry. This means large American corporations will do anything to save money, whether that means dumping toxic waste into local waters or depriving vast amounts of lands from resources, thus causing animals to go endangered and then eventually extinct. Also, it causes indigenous peoples to relocate to safer environments where the earth can afford to keep those people alive through vegetation and other resources such as lumber and fresh water. According to the Environmental Study of New Hampshire, per capita, personal emissions in the U.S. are 3 times as high as they are in Denmark. And here is shown the CO2 emissions released in 2006 in tons. So in the U.S., it's 19.78 tons compared to the UK, where they only have 9.6 tons of CO2 emissions, and all the other countries. On the other hand, people in Europe are less environmentally selfish and rely on less modern resources to get by throughout the day. For example, in Europe, gas is very expensive and is not as common like gas stations here in the US. Most people don't have cars larger than needed for travel, and most cars are electric or gas efficient and can run for longer periods of time with less gas than the average American car. In Europe, travel is primarily done through public transportation such as trains or buses. Also, unlike Americans, common household appliances are not as common in Europe as they are in America. For example, refrigerators are not as large and space-consuming in Europe as they are here. Also, not everyone in Europe owns a washer and dryer. In fact, it is more common for people who live in warm enough areas to dry their clothes outside rather than in a dryer. This doesn't exactly mean that absolutely no one in Europe owns a large refrigerator or a dryer. It's just less common simply because they cost too much to keep up with and are pretty unnecessary as most see it. Also, when you look at Europe's industry, most of their towns and buildings are very old, rich with culture and history. Because of this, they cannot keep up with the developing technology. For example, a modern hairdryer can blow out a circuit in the average home in Europe because the outlet was not capable of transferring the amount of energy that hairdryer needs to function. This goes with a lot of common appliances. A lot of it goes back to the solid roots of each nation's use of life. According to Rick Steves, the American dream emphasizes autonomy, national pride, and material wealth. Meanwhile, Europe's vision of the future emphasizes community, cultural diversity, and quality of life, while the American dream emphasizes economic growth at any cost. The European dream stresses sustainable and environmentally safe development. He also continues by stating, Europeans treasure nature as the #1 priority, and the protection of it is taken to extremes unimaginable in the United States. In their everyday lives, they willingly put up with major inconveniences for the environment. So you may ask, why is it important to know how environmentalism in Europe is different than in America, and why it's more successful there than it is here? Well, as an American, I believe it is important to acknowledge what Europe is doing and to look at it as an example for us to follow, because in the long run, both of our efforts are important for not only us, but for the entire world and everything on it. Instead of expanding our roads and tearing down more forests for our own benefit, we should learn to settle, to downsize, and to make a sacrifice so that we don't end up depleting the world of resources, because eventually, if not restored, we will run out. If we can prevent that from happening, we can save millions of species from going extinct, including us.